There's an ongoing debate in the 3D printing community amongst Bambu owners about whether it's okay to use cardboard filament spools in the Bambu Labs AMS. When printing with more traditional spool holders, or even the Bambu Labs AMS Lite, it is widely accepted that these are perfectly fine to use. But in the enclosed space of the full-size AMS, even Bambu Labs advises against it. However, it is perfectly possible to print with cardboard spools in the full-size AMS without any concern, and it's about to get even easier. In this video, I go through what the potential problems are, what the current solutions are, and what we can look forward to seeing very soon. So, let's have a look. Cardboard seems like the perfect option for spools. It's both far better for the environment and means you're not going to end up with a pile of black plastic spools to just throw in the bin. With most 3D printers, there's going to be no difference in performance when using a cardboard spool. However, there is a couple of things to consider if you're using them in a full-size Bambu Labs AMS. In a full-size AMS, because these spools are sat on their outer edges rather than hanging from a bar in the middle hole, there is concern that the weight of the spool is going to bend these outer edges and prevent it from rolling properly, therefore potentially jamming a print. The other and more potent potential issue is, as it is rolling around on these outer edges, it is going to wear down the cardboard due to friction and create tiny cardboard particles. Now, whilst these aren't going to cause an issue immediately, and I've heard people say that they've been using unmodified cardboard spools in their AMS for hundreds of hours of printing without a problem, over time these particles can build up in the AMS and can get inside the AMS mechanism, affecting both mechanical and sensor performance. There is one solution that solves both of these problems and still allows you to buy filament on cardboard spools and use it in your AMS, and that is simply to re-spool it. Respooling is effectively taking the filament off of one spool and moving it onto a different spool. In this specific scenario, you would be taking the filament from a cardboard spool and moving it onto an empty AMS-friendly plastic spool. This spool could then either be one that you've got from a vendor and have since just used all the filament that was on it, or you can print your own, like these Prusament refill walls that I designed here. There are a number of different designs for devices that you can print which allow you to easily re-spool filament, one of the most popular being the Prusament. With your cardboard spool loaded here, the filament running through the PTFE tube down here, and then connected to your AMS-friendly empty spool over here, you can just slot a drill into this socket and it will work its magic, automatically moving the filament to the new spool. Whilst this is definitely an option that can be great, it's far from ideal. It isn't necessarily preferable to need to re-spool every spool of filament you buy, as it can take a bit of time, and even with the fantastic designs such as the Prusament, a perfectly wound spool isn't 100% guaranteed every time. Whilst Bambu Labs does advise against the use of cardboard spools with the full-size AMS, they aren't concerned about cardboard itself being inside the AMS. Even their own filament spools have a cardboard core, so we don't need to be concerned about cardboard spools existing inside the AMS. The first of the two concerns I mentioned were the edges of the spool bending under its own weight, and that's definitely become less of a concern in recent years. When cardboard spools first started coming out, many were made in a particularly weak and porous cardboard and just fell apart. It was so flimsy in fact that many of the spools I had became unusable even just sat in storage, and as a result I've not got any examples to show you. These days however, many vendors supply their filament on high quality, strong and rigid cardboard such as this. As a result, providing you buy your filament from a decent vendor and you're not exposing it to a ridiculously high humidity that would soften the cardboard, which you wouldn't do anyway for the sake of the filament, then you don't need to be concerned about the strength of the cardboard spool. The other concern is friction, wearing down the spool and creating cardboard particles which can then block up the system. One solution that some people have been using here is tearing off the walls of a cardboard spool and slotting it onto a bamboo spool. I'm personally not a fan of this solution and I wouldn't recommend it. Not only is it only compatible with certain vendors whose spools are the right size, it's not necessarily locking the filament into the bamboo spool for the rotation necessary for AMS operation, and if you're not very careful, or if you're just very unlucky, it can ruin the entire spool of filament, or at the very least require you to re-spool the whole thing from a tangled mess on the floor, which is not going to be any fun. There are a number of principal designs that people have made for adapting cardboard spools for use in an AMS, and arguably the simplest and most popular of those are spool frames or spool tires. Spool tires are effectively 3D printed rings which clip over each side of a cardboard spool, effectively shielding the cardboard edge that it sits on. This means that as they're rolling inside an AMS, the rollers are making contact with the plastic tyre rather than the cardboard spool. This means that it's not wearing down the cardboard and it's not creating cardboard particles. This solution isn't without challenges of its own. One of the most common issues with spool tyres is because it is slightly increasing the diameter of the spool. Depending on the original dimensions of the spool before the tyre was fitted, it can occasionally prevent the AMS lid from properly closing. Due to their design, some cardboard spools are just too large to fit in the AMS even without tyres, so you want to make sure that you get a spool that's a suitable size to fit the AMS once it's fitted with tyres. A filament vendor I've been using for years, Filamentive, have a 750 gram spool, which is perfect for use with spool tyres in an AMS, as due to its reduced size, even with the added width and diameter of the spool tyres, it's still a great size to fit and use inside the AMS. Now, another issue that some people can have with spool tyres is that you often need to find and print ones specifically designed for the spools that you're using to ensure that the sizes and the holes all line up. The spool tyres I'm using here are my own design, specifically designed for use with the Filamentive spools, and will fit inside the AMS with the lid closed with no problem. I'll make sure I pop a link to these in the description below. Most spool tyres like this just push onto the sides of your spool and hold themselves in place nicely. If you want extra assurance that the tyres are going to stay in place, you can screw a desiccant holder onto the spool, which will both clamp the tyres in place and add extra weight to the spool, which even with plastic spools can be useful to keep it from bouncing in the AMS when it gets low. Whilst this can be great, for a lot of people 750 gram spools just isn't going to be big enough. And whilst some places do supply 1 kilogram cardboard spools, as I mentioned before, once you apply the spool tyre, it becomes bigger and then a lot of the time isn't going to fit in the AMS. Now, I am excited to say that Filamentive is working on a couple of very cool designs to work with their 1 kilogram refill spool concept, optimized for compatibility, and they've told me that this is going to come very soon, so I'll let you know when I know more. Now, I should say, considering how much I've talked about them in this video, that this is not sponsored by Filamentive, but I've been a big fan of theirs for years, and since COVID-19 lockdown, when I was running a non-profit with two friends at the pandemic, where we were producing and distributing tens of thousands of units of PPE to frontline workers for free, and with our funds being entirely donation-based, we were incredibly grateful when Filamentive gave us a fantastic deal on the materials that we needed to supply our team of makers, without which we would have had to just stop production. Irrespective of that, and on a personal basis, I'd already been using their reliable recycled filament for years, and as it comes on cardboard spools, I thought it was perfect to talk about in this video. So whether you're buying cardboard spools due to their lesser environmental impact, or you just want a colour or material from a vendor who only supplies on cardboard spools, providing it meets the requirements I mentioned in this video, you don't need to worry about the potential negative impacts of using it in your AMS. And there's some exciting innovations coming very soon to make it even easier. I really hope you found this video useful, and if you have, you know what to do. You can also now become a member of the channel, bagging yourself a load of goodies, including early access to my videos, exclusive access to the 3D Revolution Discord community, and loads more. Hit the join button below the video to know more. As always, thanks very much everyone, and until next time, happy printing. Speaking of becoming a member, I'd like to say a huge thank you to my 3D Revolutionaries down below for all of your support for me and my channel. And for the rest of you, if you'd like to join them, you now know what to do. For now, why not check out some of my other videos? You can check out my mini-series on 3D printing and the environment, or just kick back and learn something new. Thanks very much everyone, and until next time, happy printing.